Welcome to the Armageddon TV YouTube channel. While leaving behind the sixth month of the war between Ukraine and Russia, the Russian army lost its function on the Ukrainian front and began to be completely enslaved by the Ukrainian artillery and the Air Force. With the successful operations of the Ukrainian Air Force in the last 2 weeks and the firepower of HIMARS long-range missiles, the Ukrainian army has now reached the Crimea, Putin's most valuable treasure. While the Russian military presence in the Crimea has been dealt heavy blows one after another by the attacks of the Ukrainian Air Force, its most critical points are also damaged. Combined attacks of the Ukrainian Air Force and Ukrainian high-mobility M142 gun systems have been shaking Kherson for the past 20 days. The Ukrainian Air Force, which was the eyes and the ears of HIMARS in the Kherson region, continued to be the secret heroes behind the artillery strikes by identifying their targets with unmanned aerial vehicles and fighter jets. In addition, the Ukrainian Air Force carried out 38 attacks on Russian ammunition depots and critical Russian strongholds in the Kherson region in the first week, and 23 attacks in the second week. In these attacks, the Ukrainian Air Force managed to destroy 6 Russian strongholds and 8 ammunition depots, as well as dozens of armored vehicles and Russian troops. The Ukrainian army, which took the situation under control in Kherson, surprisingly succeeded in carrying out attacks on the Crimea, Putin's most valuable treasure. Crimea was at least 200 kilometers from the Ukrainian front line, and the range of HIMARS was not enough to carry out attacks in Crimea. With the start of the Crimean attacks, the real power of the Ukrainian Air Force was revealed. While Ukraine struck Russia's critical targets in Crimea, the Ukrainian Air Force took serious roles in these attacks. The latest report was one of the heaviest attacks by the Ukrainian Air Force against Russia. A Ukrainian Air Force aircraft managed to penetrate the Russian-occupied Crimean stronghold in a dawn operation yesterday morning, exposing the humiliating flaws in the Vladimir Putin's army. The Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet main headquarters was attacked and its roof blown up by a Ukrainian airstrike. Published footage shows a small drone flying over Sevastopol before hitting the Russian Navy headquarters. Giant smoke was seen rising from the city of Sevastopol, where Russia's Navy headquarters is located. This resulted in a massive exodus of panicked residents from the city as even Russian forts were attacked in the midst of the stopped war with Ukraine. Viewers and experts were stunned by how the Ukrainian aircraft managed to circumvent the air defense of the Crimea. The biggest shock was Putin, who could not finish the Russian air defense system with praise. The Russian air defense system was seen as an impenetrable wall before the war. Russia spoke very confidently about this, and they said that their air defense system was the undisputed superior system in the world. However, the armed forces of Ukraine completely destroyed this thesis. The video clips reveal the sounds of an anti-aircraft fire that tried and failed to shoot down the Ukrainian aircraft, raising questions about Russia's defense. Russian officials claimed that the Ukrainian aircraft was shot down and crashed on the roof of the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet, which is not a victory. Because the Ukrainian aircraft carried out the attack and hit the most important headquarters of Russia in the Crimea and even in the Black Sea. In addition, the Ukrainian Air Force may have played a role in the massive attack that Ukraine rained on the Russian air base in Crimea on August 9. This was the first attack and its mystery is still unsolved, but the parameters show that the Ukrainian Air Force using fighter jets AGM-88 anti-radar missiles blinded Russian radars, and then the Ukrainian army hit the Russian military air base in the Crimea with a ballistic missile. While this is the most likely possibility, another possibility is seen as the sabotage of the Russian military airbase in Crimea by Ukrainian Special Operations Forces. It is actually very strange that the aircraft, which are managed by the special operators of the Ukrainian Air Force and cannot normally go above 180 kilometers, dominate the Russian defense. This showed that the Russian raiders were ineffective and the shells of the Russian air defense could not find their targets. The Russian appointed governor Mikhail Razvozhayev immediately tried to downplay the seriousness of the attack. Initially, he claimed that the drone flew onto the roof of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet home base after Russian troops failed to hit it, but later insisted that the drone crashed onto the airbase roof after it was hit. Later, Russia made a statement. The drone was shot down just above the fleet headquarters. It fell on the roof and caught fire. The attack failed. However, in the statements made by the governor of Sevastopol regarding the attack, he said that he was at the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet during the attack and that the Ukrainian aircraft blew up the roof of the main headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and unfortunately it was not shut down. And he added that there were no casualties. This comes after overnight explosions near military bases deep within the Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine, an obvious demonstration of Kiev's growing ability to push Moscow away from the front lines. The Ukrainian Air Force had initially suffered serious losses as a result of heavy airstrikes by the Russians. However, with the support of friendly countries such as Lithuania, Poland, Turkey, the USA, and Latvia, the Ukrainian Air Force began to recover. Renewed power of Ukrainian airstrikes, Bayraktar TB2 and Ukrainian Su-27 MiG-29 jets were seen liberating Snake Island. Later, the Ukrainian Air Force supported the HIMARS artillery in July and became the secret co-hero of the success in the Kherson region, just like a Batman's Robin. In addition, Ukrainian Su-27s, Bayraktar TB2s, and Phoenix Ghost took part in cross-border operations and successfully attacked ammunition depots and military facilities in the Belgorod region of Russia. Now they are showing up in Crimea, Ukraine's ultimate target. Now the Russian army's attacks in Ukraine have come to a complete standstill and have taken a defensive position. However, in the last 10 days, according to the satellite images, official social media posts, and official reports reflecting the airstrikes, missile attacks, and sabotage attacks carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces, we see that the Russian army is unable to defend itself. We see that Ukraine is now able to reach Crimea, which is the legitimate right of the Ukrainians. Attacks carried out at much more distant points of the front caused the Kremlin to enter into inextricable situations. As a reaction to this, the Kremlin decided to close Crimea, as the Kremlin set up barricades around Sevastopol to hunt down people opposing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin's forces intensified their search for reported saboteurs. Russian soldiers searched cars with Ukrainian license plates entering or leaving Crimea's largest city all night on Friday. In Crimea, kilometers of traffic queues were seen in Crimea as panicked residents fled after a series of attacks on military targets on the Russian-occupied peninsula. Kilometers of traffic flee from Crimea as even Putin's castles are no longer safe. It is stated that the Kerch Strait is more intense than ever before. At the same time, these attacks dealt a heavy blow to the Russian people psychologically. Western officials said the explosions behind Russia's lines in Crimea had a profound psychological impact on Vladimir Putin and Moscow's leadership in general. And the constant influx of people returning from the occupied peninsula makes it increasingly difficult to hide the truth from the Russian population as a whole. In addition, officials announced today that as a result of massive Ukrainian attacks, more than half of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet fighter jets were neutralized in explosions last week at the Russian-run Seyki military airport in western Crimea, an area previously deemed safe by Moscow. Officials added that the Kremlin is busy taking responsibility for this fiasco, and President Vladimir Putin is trying to hide Ukraine's success from the Russian population, while thousands of Russians fleeing Crimea have flocked to the country. Russia has shown that it can no longer even protect its own lands in this psychological war. While the Russian people have repeatedly stated that they are uncomfortable with the war, their experience of this causes them to experience a great psychological destruction. Ukraine is now constantly getting kinetic effects far behind Russia's borders. The events have had a material impact on Russia's logistical support, but more importantly, there is a significant psychological impact on the Russian leadership. This is the result of successful guerrilla tactics implemented by the Ukrainian Air Force, Special Operations Units, and artillery. At the moment, the Ukrainian army completely dominates the Russian army, and while the Crimea is seen to be dried up after months, now weeks are mentioned. We hope that the Ukrainian army can liberate all its lands, including the Crimea, by driving the Russian army out of Ukraine as soon as possible.